All right, welcome to session 2 of Emotions and Why I Hate Them. And it's been good for me to facilitate this because it's helping me to go back and feel about the fact that I still hate emotions. Haven't finished processing those yet. So last week, we tried to introduce the idea that, ultimately we're going to have to feel emotions. It's about the emotions. And we were going to start to remember what we learned about emotions from our childhood, and I did jot down some notes. Do you guys have some ideas to add to that? What did you learn about emotions or being emotional as a child?
Yeah, I really don't remember being very emotional at all as a child.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember having any emotions.
So
Like,
the blocks to emotions entered you very young, like
yeah,
infancy.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And my mom even said, like, when I asked her, like, what was I like as a kid, as a young child, and she was like, you were always so quiet and well behaved. Like, I never had tantrums. Like, I never remember feeling angry or upset, or I remember feeling scared. That's actually the only emotion that I can remember feeling is like, I'm scared of what, I don't really know, but that's yeah. Other than that, I don't remember feeling anything.
Okay. How about yourself, Wanda?
I would agree with that. I don't remember being emotional. I don't remember ever being angry or
Wow.
throwing tantrums, but scared and maybe sadness, but kept that inside, kept that to myself, kept that to myself. Yeah.
Do you
And I don't know
know?
I don't know scared of what either.
Yeah, fear, we'll talk about it in a bit, but you don't, anyway. Do you have any idea of what you may have learned, looking back at your parents? Can you kind of guess, well, I can see why I don't feel my emotions because my parents are, what do you think? What are some ideas that you may have?
For me, for sure, because emotions weren't shown. It
Okay,
wasn't,
so
it was not that it wasn't a loving household, but it certainly wasn't a demonstrative household. Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if,
That was not unusual for my
yeah,
age growing up either. Right. And
I
and
some
think
parents.
generally, like, I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of houses, like, I feel like I hear that more often than not, that
Right.
somebody's household wasn't affectionate or like,
Warm and
or
fuzzy.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and if you
Or what
were to become expressive, what do you think will have happened? Would you have been ridiculed, shamed, ignored?
that's interesting. I had really good, strong women in my life
Yeah,
outside of my home
yeah,
that I could go to. So aunts and grandmothers, and not so much direct parent.
yeah,
So maybe I did fear. Maybe you do fear that as a child. Maybe you do fear ridicule.
yeah.
Hmm.
Beside other things, that could be other things like
Or ignoring.
ignoring, because that would be
Right.
mine too. I would tend to
Right.
ignore my
Right.
kids having certain emotions. I would withdraw. I would
Right.
withdraw, which is to them a rejection.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of the things that I felt from my family growing up is if I'm having an emotion, the projection is, why do you think you're so important that I have to stop what I'm doing for you? Is
Yes.
one.
Yes.
And two was this feeling my parents were giving me that they have real problems to deal with
Mm.
and that my being
Right.
emotional
Yeah.
was a burden. And
Yeah.
then another one is that my parent was the one that decided the narrative of my experience. She will decide what happened and she will decide what it means, which will revolve around her. And therefore, my experience wasn't valid because I have to wait till somebody else tell me what it means and what even happened. Even now, I still kind of have to stop and go, so what does that mean? And I'm just realizing now in this conversation, like, it's from that. So thank you. The other one is if I have emotion, I'll be judged. I will be shamed. If I have emotion, it means that I have no worth. For some reason, having emotions mean you have no worth. And also, if I have an emotion, then that means that I have shamed someone else. I'm making somebody else bad or look bad. Another one is that whatever I'm feeling is wrong. I'm wrong in what I feel because the interpretation is something else. And I am to blame for the situation anyway, so why cry about it? And that's a huge block for why I can't cry. Another one is if I'm crying, it's because it's too late and I've already failed. So again, it's a sense of shame and blame. So if I'm crying, that means I'm accepting I am the failure, I am to blame, and I don't want to feel those feelings, so I don't have emotion. Those are some of the things I learned about as a child. Yeah, does some of that resonate?
We carry those to adulthood.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the vulnerability,
Absolutely.
allowing you to be vulnerable, because then it leads to judgment, right?
Exactly. And if
Right.
you have the emotion of being judged, then when you're expressing your emotion now, you're going to attract judgments in order to recreate the childhood emotion. And then you let yourself process the pain of being judged. Because once you do that, then you don't attract.
And you never get out of that cycle.
Or you do once you process the emotion of being judged.
Right.
Then you break the cycle. Exactly.
But you have to break that cycle.
You have to let yourself experience.
You have to do the work. Yes.
It's awful.
Exactly.
It's very awful. Yeah.
But sometimes for me, judgment is the perception of being judged. Maybe I'm not going to be judged, but I have a perception that I'm going to be judged. So I fear that. I fear that. I fear that. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
And so when you are emotional, and though you're not being judged, you feel you're being judged again to re-trigger the childhood emotion. So you have to go through the experience of I feel I'm being judged, not get angry about it, but to go, what's it like to be judged? Release it. Because once you had an emotion and then you had a certain reaction to it, it's now locked in together. And you have to relive that together and release it. So if you were ashamed for having emotion, now when the emotion is coming up, you're going to experience shame first. I feel ashamed of myself. And generally, I like to get angry at somebody who's shaming me. Then I have to go, oh God, it's a law of attraction. It's okay. Just feel shame. And then you release the shame. And then you're like, it's just an emotion. Then that layer is over. So you're going to have to rework through not only the emotion, but first you have to work through the blocks to emotion. What was done to you? You're going to have to release that first. Kind of going backward in the layers. Does it make sense?
It does. It's like any injury we have to our body too. We have to go back to release it, right?
Exactly. So I remember when I start to say, just let yourself experience what it's like to be judged. Oh, I just felt like salt to a skin. Like it was just raw. It was so, I was like, why are you doing this? Why? Are you sure this is going to work? Like kind of going, why are you torturing it? It was so bad. Having to reprocess being judged. It was really bad. Yeah. And now it's over. So I may experience being judged, but I can not attack them back. I have to like, please don't attack people. It's just a law of attraction. My reaction is to lash out. So it took a while to kind of like, please don't lash out, just process the emotion.
And that's something like experiencing like grief, sadness, like those ones are like easy because you cry it out. But some of these other ones, like that have like, oh, it just feels icky. This just feels like, you know, like when there's not necessarily tears to as the emotional release. Like I'm finding it like when I'm kind of tapping into some of those, like, you know, the feelings of shame that I've had. And it's like, I can't cry this out so how
No,
do I get this out? You know, like how do I
exactly.
release it? Like that's
Exactly. It's just
like a
agony. Yeah.
yeah, you just I don't
Yeah.
like and like fear, I know you can kind of shake it out,
Yeah.
like the shaking and terror is like, but yeah, some of these other ones, like do you just stay with like those icky feelings until they pass type
Yeah.
thing? Like,
Yeah. Sometimes you try to mimic, like I'm reprocessing a pretty severe childhood abuse experience of being tied up. And so I'm literally going, do I need to like grab a rope and just recreate being tied? And like sometimes you have to recreate the posture physically to go into it.
hmm,
So that's really, it's just, oh, I'm so angry that somebody would do that to a child, so angry that I have to go back through that. But sometimes you just like shame, if you think about shame, you usually want to go hide in a hole.
yeah.
You just want to go sit in a corner and just,
Yeah, and curl up. And then, but,
yeah.
and with crying, like, it's done when you're done crying. But like, with, with these ones, like when you're like curled up in a
Yeah.
ball and like just feeling like, how do you know when that one's
Yeah.
over? Like,
But
you
from
just
from
feel
what
it
I've
pass?
learned, all emotion will eventually take you to crying. Crying is the end.
Hmm.
Okay, so it'll
The
all come.
release. It's the release.
So
Okay.
if you cry, if you're feeling shame, it's because you're being made to feel that you are inferior, you have no worth. And then you'll drop you into the I have no worth, no one will ever love me.
Right. So there's
So
always a grief really associated with it.
at
Hmm.
the end,
Hmm.
the loss of love is always, from what
Okay.
I've heard, the loss of love is just like gutting. I haven't
Yeah.
hit those yet, but that's what
Yeah.
I've heard.
Yeah. Okay.
And so fear is created um, when you have an emotional response, because you're an infant and you're feeling emotion, that's how you experience everything. You're having an emotional response, something shuts you down. And then when it gets shut down, fear is created. Now, fear is like biologically created. You're now afraid of remembering what happened because of what was done to you to suppress your emotion. And then people generally don't like you being in fear. So then you have to create emotional addictions to suppress fear. And then you're living in the addictions. And so one of the challenges of doing this work is to see the addictions, emotional, physical, spiritual, mental addictions, because that's where you're doing damage to others and yourself. So some of the hardest part of this work is to see what you're doing in your addictions, and even calling it addiction is already such a strong word. But when you start to feel into it, you'll be like, yeah, no, I have to have this. Like you can feel the frenzy. I have to have this. You can't take this away from me. But those
And
are also emotions.
so okay, so if I as a kid I ended up shutting myself down,
Yeah,
and creating big walls
yeah,
so I wouldn't feel whatever rejected or abandoned
yeah.
by
So now
what
there's fear, which is
yeah,
what
so
you guys
there's
were talking
fear,
about
but
earlier.
then
I'm afraid, but I don't know what about. It's perfect.
yeah. And then
Hmm.
I think what I did was then like I created this, I don't know if it's an addiction or a facade of like, I'm
Yeah,
a strong person and I don't even need your love. So
exactly.
is that an addiction
I think that's
or more
facade,
facade?
right, Michael? Are those facades? Yeah, so those are facades.
And then and then the addiction of that kind of facade, like I'm just trying to think.
I know, I'm trying to sort that out too myself.
Yeah.
So if you have the, well, but if you are strong, you will get approval from your parents for being strong and not needing anything from them.
Right. So
So
the
the addiction is
approval
for
is the
approval
addiction. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
by creating the facade of
Look
I'm
how
tough.
strong I am. And now I'm getting
Exactly.
a pat on the back for being such a strong, independent girl.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
That's the addiction.
Unless your parent unless your parent felt stronger because you were dependent,
Exactly.
Yeah.
right?
Needed. The addiction to being
That
needed
right,
will
right,
create a needy children. Exactly.
right,
I've done
right.
both to my
I was
kids.
going to say, I
So
think I would have ended up
We've
doing
probably
one with one parent and one and then, yeah, the
yeah.
other. obviously unconsciously, of course, but yeah.
Exactly. So as you
Yeah.
start to confront, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, there could be an addiction for validation
Yeah.
or
Oh,
maintaining the facade.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Once you start talking about addictions, you're like, I have
oh.
nothing but addictions all the time.
Mhm.
Gets pretty tough to do that. And yet a lot of our suffering in adult life is due to addictions, the consequence of addictions. And so a lot of your happiness or a lot of lack of pain from now will be from stopping addictions, and which will then start exposing the emotion of fear. So if you're blocked to fear, you're going to keep going to another addiction, which is why at some point you'll have to work through, why am I blocked to feeling fear? So I made a list of my blocks to feeling fear. That was the first thing I did. Don't remember how many items I got to, maybe 20 blocks or something. And then I started to feel the block emotionally. If I'm afraid, it means I'm weak. So then I walked around all day going, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. Oh my God, now terrible things happen to me because I'm weak. Started to release that layer. And as I did that, the truth will enter me. You got to release the emotion, and then the truth enters you, and it becomes a strength. Then I pick the next block, and the next block, and the next block. As I continue to feel all those blocks, the emotion of fear itself becomes very easy to feel. I'm always saying fear is so easy. It's uncomfortable, but it's so easy to feel, because with every layer of emotion you're working through, you're going to feel the fear of emotions, fear of truth, fear of shame, fear of anger, fear of rejection, fear of, they're all layers of fears over and over and over and over. So being comfortable with fear by working through the blocks is very helpful. And then I realized that I'm very, very blocked to anger. I had a huge facade that I have no anger. So then I wrote down my blocks to anger. Took me 2 years to work through the blocks. And then the anger can just flow. 2 years, exactly. Block by block by block by block. And you just feel the emotion of the block. You feel it like you need it.
And like some of those blocks to feeling anger would be things like, oh, like girls don't get angry, or
Yep.
I would be punished if I was angry, or
Yep.
like things along those lines.
I'm bad if I'm angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even yesterday, I was connecting to some addictive emotion and processing my addiction to dominate, and I'm still working through those emotions. But when you're feeling those emotions, you feel nasty. And then I'm feeling like I'm a bad person. Oh no, I can't talk to God now because I'm bad again. Like I still have the feeling of, if I'm angry, I'm bad. And I had to ask God. I was like, God, how do you feel that I'm feeling these emotions? And I immediately got the answer, please don't judge. And I go, thank you. The problem was I was judging the emotion. God had no problem with the anger I was feeling. So you still have to keep fine tuning. Like if I'm having emotion, God is gonna reject me, right? So that's a sum. What else do you have around blocks to anger? I'm gonna hurt someone.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't have any problems feeling anger.
Yeah.
That was my go-to emotion for a long time, I think.
Yeah. I was severely blocked to anger. I was angry, but I was blocked to processing the anger. So I pretended I had no anger. It's quite hilarious looking back.
Well, and yeah, and it is funny because I like, until I started doing this work and like going through those blocks, I look back and I realize how angry I was and how often I was in like just in a general state of like irritability or frustration. Like I was there most of the time, and it's like I didn't even know that was right. And now I'm not. But it was like
so
the only
if you
emotion that I would feel.
If you're blocked to anger, you don't even know you're in addictions, because in order to work through addictions, it's the anger that gives it away.
Yeah. Now when I feel angry, I'm like, oh, Adrienne, you better go journal and see
what's this addiction.
Like I know it's like a clear, like clue along along the path.
Exactly. Now.
No.
But it takes some kind of a strong desire to want to even continue exploring. So a lot of the shock for me has been to see how much I've damaged my children. Like in the effort of protecting my children from, damaging people out there, to realize I've been the one that's done the most and still doing, because I still have addictions I'm in denial of. That's been a bigger shock. I think for most people, the shock is I'm the one damaging my children. So a lot of people choose to stay in denial because it's like, well, I can't confront this about myself, which means you're going to keep staying in addiction. You're going to keep hurting them. So that's a lot of shock happens when you start to process emotions. Yeah. And what about blocks to fear?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you to go through some of those.
Sure. So what are most common blocks to feeling fear? Mine has been I'm weak. If I'm feeling fear, I'm weak. If I'm feeling fear, it was so long ago, I can't really remember. Oh, something is actually wrong. If I'm feeling fear, something is wrong. Even this morning, I was in panic, going through some panic, because yesterday I was feeling the anger. Today I dropped into the fear. It's a layer. So I'm feeling this panic of something's wrong. And I have to keep telling myself, no, it's a past. It's a past. You're releasing something from the past. But this is feeling of something is wrong. Something's going to happen. If I'm feeling fear,
I'm threatened. My physical being is threatened.
Yeah. My survival is something. Yeah, exactly. I got to fix something in the here now. That's a good one.
Control. I won't get my way.
I won't get my way. Yeah. If I'm feeling fear, that means that I'm no longer in control. I'm not exerting confidence and assertiveness. People will judge me. People will take advantage of me because they can see I'm weak. I'll be manipulated. I'll be controlled. When actually is the opposite. When you're in fear, you are being controlled and you can't see it. What else is there? The Abraham Hicks's kind of work. If you're feeling fear, you're going to attract it.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So just pretend it's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
Now you're going to make bad things happen to you.
Yeah.
So I remember clearly because I used to teach Hicks's work. That's how well I knew it. I had been to the conferences. I've been in the hot seat. So I made a dare with myself. I said, look, if something happened, I'll take the hit. I'm going to go ahead and feel this fear. Let's see what happens. And every issue that I felt fear about are the issues I have not had it happen. So I have not attracted the event that I was fearful about. Those are the events I did not have to attract, negative events. It's been the opposite. What else is there? I can't function if I'm in fear all the time. How will I do my work?
And I feel like there was almost like don't be scared, come on, come just be happy. An unvalidation or a minimization, like, oh, what are you scared about? Come on, let's just keep whatever playing or.
Yeah. Okay. So what you are fearing about isn't valid.
Yeah.
Comfort it, soothe it, comfort it.
Yeah, lots of that. Yeah.
Because once you start processing fear, you're going to start seeing things as they really are. You can't go along with the story anymore. People don't want that.
Yeah.
And then I also now have fear of, oh my God, what memory is going to come up this time? Which is control, like Michael said. So even today, I was like processing fear, and I'm like, oh shit, here it comes. There's a memory coming. Oh God, what now? I can't do this anymore. How many of these are there? So that's a block.
Yeah, and you're even just like, fearing not necessarily even the memory, but like, oh, this one's just gonna feel really bad, like fearing the pain or whatever.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
is exactly what the fear really is about.
Yeah.
This emotion hurts. I'm terrified of how much this will hurt. And it does hurt because
Yeah.
something terrible happened to you.
Yeah.
Even if it was just that uh, your parents were stressed and they withdrew from you emotionally, you know, it may look something so innocent on the surface, but to the child, loss of love is the worst thing ever. So
Mhm.
to the child, is a very terrifying event to happen. Um, and it hurts because, so basically, fear always tell you that you're believing a lie, always, every time. So when you release the fear, now truth can awaken. And I beginning to enjoy the experience of processing fear because something will wake up in me and I'll be like, oh my God, I see the truth is the opposite. And I feel stronger and I feel calmer.
But sometimes there's even a fear of knowing that truth, though, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The disillusionment of,
exactly. Because
yeah,
now you'll be even more disengaging from the world's addictions.
yeah, yeah. Or like if I see the real truth, then I'm gonna have to make changes, or
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to like
yeah,
whatever, quit my job or move or
yeah,
break up with that person. Like
yeah.
if I see
Fear of
that
change.
truth. Yeah, yeah.
Fear of change,
Mhm.
exactly. That's a again, you're just gonna have to feel and feel, feel. And most times, so I tell myself, oh, patience, we just want to know what it is. Just knowing what the fear is about can release a lot of the anxiety. And then you can release the fear and still choose not to change. You're allowed to make that choice. You are the one with the choice. So that gives me the courage to keep going. But then not changing will create so much pain that you will be like, ouch, this is too painful. I can't keep going like this. It will be, you'll be forced to change. The way God has designed the universe, we're supposed to be constantly changing. So every time somebody's saying, this is my life right here, secure and steady, I don't need to change, nothing needs to change, you are going against the flow of the whole universe. Like, it's good luck going against that tsunami. Change is supposed to be the natural state. So, yeah. What are some blocks to feeling shame? I found shame to be the hardest.
Yeah, I was like that one's just the worst one. That
I
one
felt
feels the worst.
it feels the worst.
And it feels like the hardest one to release. Like I was saying, like
Yeah,
you can't just cry it out or
no,
like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Some of them for me, shame was about shame means I am to blame. I'm the bad
Mhm.
person. I did something wrong. So I have a lot of trouble feeling shame because as a child, I was shamed as a way of saying, look how bad you are. When shame in its healthy expression is about saying, oh, I don't feel very good about what I am or what I've done. That didn't feel very good, which is conscience. That's a different kind of shame. But I'm not willing to feel either shame because it means I'm a bad person.
So like healthy shame is more like a moral compass.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. But then at some point, I just decided, you know what? What I feel is that I'm a bad person. Let's just go there. So I just let myself feel I'm a bad person, and it's gotten a lot easier. So now when I have voices telling me how terrible I am and I should be ashamed of myself, I can say, I'm not afraid to see what I've done. I'm not afraid to go to God and say, yeah, this is what I've done, and I'm willing to accept that. So then there's this integrity, this strength to stand up to the shaming voices, because shame is used as a way of destroying your worth, and that feels terrible. When I would say when it comes to conscience, it's almost like saying, you're God's highest creation. You're better than this. Why are you doing this? That is a positive shame for me. So when God or our guides are trying to awaken us, they're trying to say, you're better than this. Why are you degrading yourself to this level? You feel ashamed, but for the positive reason. You're like, yeah, why am I treating myself with such little worth? I'm better than this. I can try to change. So shame can be a block for that reason. That you have to feel, being made to feel you have no worth. It's your fault. You're a bad person. For me, it's also about remembering the abuse that happened that created the shame, because when someone abuses you, they have earned shame. What they do is that they dump it into the victims. So now the victim carries the shame of the perpetrator. So a lot of the shame I carry is the abuser's shame that now feel as if it's mine. Which is why when parents make their children responsible for their emotions, they're grooming them to accept abuse, accept blame. Then people can abuse the children because they will dump the blame in the child. That's the grooming that can happen unknowingly by parents. Yeah.
What about like a block to feeling shame, like because you're like, I'm a perfect person and I don't make mistakes. So
Yeah.
if I feel shame and have to admit that I made a mistake, then I'm not upholding my facade
Yeah.
of, what
Yeah.
all of that could entail.
So there is a reason. So if you're not perfect as a child, what happened to you? Because then that's about remembering that event.
Right. Like what would happen if I did make mistakes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shame feels like a real childish emotion or baby emotion. And
Okay.
to me, it does. And about being dirty, maybe wetting my diapers or pooping
Right.
something.
Right.
Mm.
Right. That would be because someone projected it at you. As a baby, you wouldn't feel that about yourself. You wouldn't feel that I'm dirty or I'm bad. But if somebody projected at you, you're disgusting, you're bad because you're dirty, that would then enter you.
That could be part of toilet training, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, parents do that, right? We are all community do use shame to keep the kids in line.
Oh my
It's
gosh, Matt, like how many times, like you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, like a parent like saying that, like,
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're attacking their worth.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but it's a sentence that's so easily said
Yeah.
to people or to
Yeah.
kids.
Or
Yeah.
compare the child to somebody else, also for the purpose of shaming. That was done
Yeah,
to me a
your
lot.
sister would never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at how awesome so and so's kid is, and he's got A's, and he's in the basketball team. And what you're actually doing is shaming the child listening there. So
Yeah.
I've caught myself now becoming sensitive, going, "Oh, that's what I'm really doing to my kids. Yikes! Oh, terrible." Yeah.
I had a teacher in school, 6th grade, who said that the way that we behave reflects on our parents. And he used that. So the shame of my actions would make my parents look bad.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that was pretty strong.
Yeah. And then your parents have a facade. You got to make us look good in the community.
The family
So
facade.
then,
Yeah. And even, I mean, and you can see that like if a kid's having a tantrum in a grocery store or something and the parents like, oh my God, you're embarrassing me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
again, that's so normal or
Yeah.
common.
And yet it's a law of attraction trying to help the parents surrender into their shame and release it.
Yeah.
It got triggered for the parent to release their shame,
Yeah.
but then they turn around and attack and blame somebody else for it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be humble to like, law of attraction is triggering shame. It's just an emotion. I feel like I'm going to die from this, but it's okay. It's I mean, social media allow us to shame attack people. That's what we're doing through social media.
Mhm.
And destroy their work and destroy their lives, and you can't come back from it because we're always going to hold it against you. Like it's gone really violent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that's about too. It's an attack.
Yeah, and it's, you know, Michael's saying that like shame feels like a really childish emotion. I actually feel the opposite. I feel like children don't have any shame until they learn
Yeah.
to have it from,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like it's, yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a very natural thing for a child to have
No.
until a parent or, you know,
Well, I
teaches
do
them.
feel like if a child is allowed to feel their own emotion, their conscience can kick in pretty quick in a
Yes, right.
healthy
Like the
way.
healthy shame. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You know, you smack a kid, the kid starts to cry, you start to feel bad, and you start to cry because now your conscience kicked in. Like, that's healthy right there.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be, yeah. Which is why when you see one of these incidents where a child got smacked, the child's crying, next thing you know, the smacker is crying too. Because now the child is in repentance, you know, like it's being processed, and the child's like, I will never do that again. That hurt so bad. Like,
Mhm.
done. The lesson is there in itself. The repentance, forgiveness happen at the same time.
Yeah, imagine
Like,
if like we could all just learn those lessons like that.
Yeah.
At such an early age.
exactly. Which I think is what children would do naturally if they're allowed to stay in their experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would have happened anyway. And then they both go back out to play.
Yeah.
Just two friends. It's not being held against them as a label.
Yeah.
Like, what you did, you bad kid. Go say sorry. And it's like, now the child's angry that I was blamed for something and I had to go apologize for something that wasn't my fault. And we do that a lot now, right? Like when I have these things that I have to look at and I'm like, well, that wasn't my fault. I was made to do it. That was my addiction created from my childhood. Why should I be feeling bad about myself now? I let myself rant, just get it out of the system. But I have a lot of that defensiveness.
Mm.
Why should I feel ashamed when somebody is to blame for this?
Mm-hmm.
Your sense of justice.
Exactly.
Mm.
Vengeance is actually vengeance, but yeah, I called it justice. I was quite addicted to it. Took a while to work through it. Yeah, the righteousness. That's an addiction too.
Could I ask a question about fear, going back to unpack
Yeah.
something that you said?
Yeah.
When you were talking about Abraham Hicks, I think you said that if you didn't get, I think you were inviting triggers.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Yeah.
And then if you weren't triggered, you didn't have an issue with it.
Oh, is
Or,
that what Hicks is?
No. I mean, it was
What was
just
what I
about
was
the
saying?
time of Abraham Hicks. You said, I think you
Okay.
said that if you,
Oh, okay. Yes. If I release the fear about that issue, then yeah, I don't attract the event that I was fearing about. That's right. Yeah. Trigger. That's right. So yeah, trigger is the right word for it as well. So if I was really terrified of being homeless, and so I started to feel the feeling of I'll be homeless someday, and it was like, are you sure if you feel this, you'll actually attract it? And I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. If I end up being homeless, so be it. I'm gonna experiment. So I started to feel and shake about someday I'm gonna be homeless. And at some point, the feeling released me, and I felt to such an extent going, that is one thing that is never going to happen to me. Are you kidding me? I will, if I ever do end up being on the street, I'm probably going to laugh myself till I pee. It'll be so funny. That's never going to happen to me because something just left me and I was like, yeah, no, that's never going to happen to me. I'm good. Like, it was nice to release the feeling going, no, that's not my story anymore. But as long as I had the fear, I would have attracted it.
Because that's like the problem with the Abraham Hicks stuff is that they're like, you know, just focus on the positive, but
Yeah.
you're essentially just pretending that you don't have that fear.
Exactly.
And you're like, you're over here pretending like I'm fine and happy, but the fear is still there. So the law of attraction will still attract, even though you're pretending like you're fine. Right? Like that's kind of
exactly.
It's just a bunch of pretending.
Exactly. Fear is a magnet. But when you're beginning to feel fear, you may think, now that I'm feeling it, I'm going to call it. It's one of the
That's what
blocks.
Abraham Hicks teaches. If you look at it, then
Yeah.
you'll attract it.
You'll attract it.
But the reality is if you just let yourself go feel it and it gets released, then there's
Yeah.
nothing there.
There's nothing there.
Attract.
Yeah.
Like that seems so logical. Why do so many people still believe that?
But that's because you've done it. To start with, it felt illogical.
Right. Okay.
Always
Right.
feel illogical. Fear
Right.
make you believe the insanity is real. And then you have to actually release the fear and then go, how the hell was that ever, how did that ever make sense? What? So now you start looking around, you're going, you guys are insane, right? People talk out of their fear and you're like, do you hear what you sound like right now? But people who process fear are in the minority. So you just end up being quiet, going, I won't join you, but God, you're insane. So once you release fear, then truth can enter, because fear represents a lie, and fear represent about the fear is always about having to remember something that's already happened in Western world, because fear does, like Michael said, signify some kind of a survival issue. Biologically, fear is about, oh, this could be a threat to my survival. But we have to suppress emotions, so that generates fear. So in a Western country where survival isn't as big an issue as it is in other parts, fears are always about something about the past, and it represents a lie. So even though, say, the fear is about, I will be abandoned. If I express my emotion, I will be abandoned. Well, the fear will take you to an emotion that did happen in your childhood. But once you release it, you're like, it's the opposite. When I'm in my emotion, I feel God. I feel my guides. It's the opposite of abandon. I actually feel really connected to the real community. I feel really cared for. That's weird. But it's very painful layers of emotions to release about being abandoned. But you always connect to the opposite truth.
I feel like I'm alone when I'm afraid. What you're talking about, your guides, spirits, God, things like that you're not really alone.
Once I released that
That's
I'm alone,
if
then I started to feel them. For the longest time, I felt I'm alone. There's no one here. I had to feel and feel and feel and feel. And then I go, actually, I can actually see them now. So now I can actually see the outline of my guide coming close. And I'm like, wow, how lovely is that?
so
But
you had a fear that you're in this by yourself and you have to,
yeah,
you may have been really small, but I've got to take care of this by myself by any means possible.
Yeah.
And that's a
if
fear.
I'm afraid, then because when you're feeling fear, people around you don't want to be triggered. So they will banish you, ignore you. So you're going to feel I'm alone. If I feel fear, I'm going to be alone. Get to recreate it.
Because they don't want to feel their fear, so they'll want me to shut down or get away.
Exactly.
Or they will leave me so they don't have to feel it.
Exactly.
I know I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but just being a normal person, when I see somebody voicing that, I can really see how crazy their fear
Yeah.
is and
Yeah.
how it possesses them.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see it in their eyes if they're like hijacked by the fear. But if you can just surrender to the fear and release it, then yeah. Was that Marlin?
Merlin, yeah, he's. I don't need to be afraid of anything, so I've got a guard dog.
Oh,
Yeah.
About 20 pounds.
There it is. So yeah, there's overall blocks to emotions, and then overall blocks to that it's all going to be emotional, and that as you heal, you're going to become an emotional being. So it's not just about, because I always had this idea of you release emotion and then it's done out of your way and feeling lighter and better in your law of attraction is better, yes. And of course, that law of attraction, I attracted Mary's comment about, no, you're supposed to be an emotional person. And I went, oh, I remember this despair of like, oh no, I'm going to become an emotional person. Sucks. I remember being really upset about it like 5 years ago. Of like, we are meant to be emotional people, and I was really upset about it. Like, who's gonna take you seriously if you're ever always in your emotion? That's a block right there. No one's gonna take you seriously, and you need to be taken seriously. No one's gonna believe you, but always in your Pollyanna emotion, which is again a judgment about the gender. So I've been made to feel that if you're a girl are emotional, and you don't take them seriously. So those are boom, boom, boom right there. I'm gonna have to feel through those. Yeah.
Thinking of some other positive qualities that come out of facing a fear, I think
Yeah.
One would be that I would have some confidence in truth as
Yeah.
something that's good for me.
Yeah.
Um,
You'll build your faith.
and that I'm not alone, that there is help, that I'm loved. I'm not in this by myself.
But you're gonna have to go through the emotion
Okay.
that I'm alone and I have to do this myself, just because that is the emotional layer. And your guides, while they're around you, will help recreate the feeling. Because there are many times when I go, where's everybody? Why can't I feel you? God, what happened? Where's God? I can't feel God. What happened? Why did you leave? Well, they were just recreating the feeling of that I'm alone. Nobody's around me. So then I just have to go, oh, okay, that's just what I need to feel into. Okay. You'll come back, right? Promise you'll come back, because I hate this feeling. I hate it. Like, where did everybody go? But they're helping to recreate that space for me. And then I can go into it.
Because they want you to be free of that feeling.
Emotion.
They don't want you to like just keep bypassing it.
Exactly. Because
Right.
they can see how much is affecting me, how much it restricts me. Yeah, absolutely. Fear numbs out your desire. So life is supposed to be enjoyable because you're connected to your real self and you're expressing your desire, which always create very positive law of attraction. Life responds when you express your true self. But when you have a fear, that in that area, the desire is numbed out. So you got to release the fear, and then you're like, whoa, here's my desire. Now I even know what I want.
Well, and that's
Or
been something, oh, sorry.
go for it.
Well, just like even realizing, like, you know, when I started to realize all my blocks and fears and all that stuff, in like kind of looking back and being like, I don't even know like what I desire, like what is even
Yeah.
real, like, because
Yeah.
all like I realized that most of my actions are, you know, were all based on getting approval or, you know,
Yes.
whatever, like all the things, all the
Yeah.
addictions of like, or
Yeah.
just doing what you're supposed to do, or I don't know. So like
Exactly.
now that I've like kind of worked through some of it, and I'm like, you know, it's like learning how to recognize a real desire.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that feels very
Yeah.
foreign of like,
Yeah.
oh, like, am I doing this?
I know.
Like, is this a real
Is
desire,
this
or is it
another
based on
addiction?
a sneaky addiction that I'm not like, is it based on wanting attention or approval or love or validation?
Good questions.
Like,
Hold
what
me
is
through
real?
those.
So like, I don't know, do
Exactly.
you have like, how do you know when it's a real desire? Do you like, you just know?
I find that, I mean, my addictions still sneak in, but there's this feeling of the very act is its own fulfillment.
Mm.
Whether or not you get anything out of it, the very act of getting to do it was, right there is a
Right.
sweet spot. You're good right there. This feeling of timelessness, there's a feeling of flow, of feeling whole, a feeling of like, oh my God, I'm getting paid to do this.
Mm.
Like, wow, how is it that this is life? This is how I get to live all the time. How is that even possible?
So it's doing
those
something
are,
like without an expectation of,
yes. But again, I still have addiction. So the addiction will go, would you get something from this? Would this happen? With that, I'm like, oh, those are addictions. Okay. But still, you do get a pretty nice flow, feeling of wholeness, feeling of timelessness from it. You feel energized at the end of it instead of tired from it.
Mm.
So those would be my clues. And then law of attraction, people generally get really drawn to, like I'm doing the experiment, prayer experiment. Prayers are like this crazy desire of mine. I'm just so excited about it. So then I start doing this prayer experiment workshops, and people are just, I'm like, why? What? Like, what happens? What is it about prayer workshops? Like, why are people, they just so drawn to it? They're like, you got to do more of those. Going, what's happening for you? Because I'm trying to get the clue going, I'm in my passion, but people are having a very different experience when I'm facilitating prayers. So I'm very curious, because then I'm going, is that my true self? Is that my true desire? Is that should I be doing more of this? Because there's something happening. For me itself, I'm so excited I can barely talk. I have to like tone myself down. So excited I'm about this topic. But then something happens to the people in it. They all talk about like, yeah, I don't know, Michael, were you there in the last prayer group? Yeah, right? Yeah. Casey just said, can we do prayer experiment in a seashell retreat? And I'm like, right. Because she just like zing. I'm going, I don't know what happens, but okay. So those are clues. Yeah. And in prayers, it's so easy because I'm so not involved in it. It's like you are asking God for whatever, not at all involved in this process, but God, I love it. And something happens to people in that experience. So I'm getting kind of going, okay, this be a part of my true self coming out there. Yeah. So we have one more next week. If you guys want to talk, sit through about the idea that as you heal, you're going to become emotional beings, emotional all the time. What comes up for you around it? And also, maybe we can talk about how difficult it is that to begin with, it's going to be mostly pain, because we're back up of a lot of pain, and we have to look at the pain we have caused in our addictions. We have to wake up to that and how confronting that is. Maybe we can talk about that for the last session. Is that okay for everyone? How about you, Wanda? Because you're new to all this.
Yeah.
Is there something else
Yeah.
about emotions you want to talk about?
No, it's good. Well, I was here
Okay.
last week. I just wasn't visible last week.
No, I think I've done like years of workshops.
I know.
Okay.
I know. No, I feel like this fits right in. Like, I don't feel like I'm new.
Good.
it can be a
Good.
new, like a whole new language though too, right? Like that a lot of people don't speak. So,
Yeah,
but I
it kind of is. But Adrian and I speak it, not often, but we
Oh,
do speak
that's
it. So that's
beautiful.
that's what brought me here. So it's a language we need to speak because we fear fear's the big
Well,
thing, right?
and emotion, that's the beauty of emotions. Like everyone just knows it. It's
Right.
like we're talking about emotions. Somehow something in you just go, yeah, I know this. I know this. It's beautiful. I've spoken to quite a few doctors where when I start talking about suppressed emotion causing illness, they all have this feeling of visceral feeling of, I knew it. I just don't have a framework for it, but I knew it. So I love hearing that, well, most of us, something in us just resonate with the idea. The answer lies in the emotions. Yeah.
And not all emotions are negative,
Oh, yes.
right? They're
It's
not all. We
just,
don't. To be
no.
called an emotional being doesn't mean it's not necessarily a bad thing,
no.
right? If you
But
get
in
to the
order
other
to,
side of it, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But in order to
Yeah.
get through that, you're going to have to kind of be
Absolutely.
real with how, the fact that I'm not an emotional being means I'm really blocked to being an emotional being. And in order to release that, I'm going to have to name it. I'm going to have to be real with myself with with how I really feel, which is something I may not be proud of that it's there, but it's there. And I have to at least say, this is how I really feel about emotion. This is embarrassing if we gone soon, but for real, this is where I'm at. You got to start to name those things. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.